Former Navy SEAL who trained with IDF Special Forces Cameron Hamilton, and a former member of Israel's Special Ops Counterterrorism Unit, Aaron Cohen. Gentlemen, thank you again for joining us. We appreciate this. Aaron, to you first. I want to play some sound. This is Secretary Blinken talking about why the ceasefire ended. Watch and I'll get your response.
Hamas reneged on commitments it made. In fact, even before the pause came to an end. It committed an atrocious terrorist attack in Jerusalem. It began firing rockets before the pause had ended. It reneged on the commitments it made in terms of releasing certain hostages.
I mean, it's on top of the terrorist attack in Jerusalem, Aaron. The bottom line here is there any way that Israel can ever trust anything that Hamas does or says?
No, Trace, that trust is out the window. Israel got a bunch of hostages back, which is really important. That's always been Israel's #1 priority. But the fact is that Israel needed to re-up its leverage, and that leverage comes from the pressure cooker campaign, that Sir Lachatz that we've talked about, which Israel brilliantly rolled out for the last 40-plus days. Hamas was begging for that ceasefire, and Israel just said enough is enough. It's time to go back to work. It's time to get that Shell Dog JTAC unit back on those structures. It's time to get those special operations units back inside those buildings and keep that pressure up. And you might see some more hostages getting released now because Israel's got that pressure cooker cranked up again, and that's where she needs to be right now.
Yeah, he talks about the pressure cooker, Cameron, and I want to put this up on the screen. This is from The Guardian. They write the following, quoting here, the country's military, speaking about Israel, dropped leaflets in parts of Khan Yunis, where Israel believes Hamas leadership is based, warning citizens to evacuate farther south to Rafah, prompting humanitarian groups to say that Palestinians risked being forced completely out of the territory. This is going to ramp up international pressure against Israel, maybe unjustly, but it's going to happen, Cameron. I mean, what's the response going to be?
I think you're absolutely right. Unfortunately, Israel still needs to keep the pressure on. Hamas needs to be held culpable and responsible for the cessation of these conditions and these discussions. Israel has used a lot of tools and resources to bring hostages back, and we're all obviously rejoicing seeing that these individuals are coming back home, they're embracing their families, and that's a wonderful thing. Unfortunately, the longer this ceasefire continues, Hamas maneuvers for a strategic advantage. So the pressure cooker theory that we're talking about here with their campaign is essential, which is why Israel is now talking with their regional partners here about actual buffer zones around Gaza so as to ensure that attacks in the future do not happen with the same effectiveness.
You know, Aaron, I mean, you know what it's going to take to get this ceasefire back on, right? Will it be 70 hostages, 80, 100? How many hostages are we talking about before Israel decides, okay, it's worth another try for another ceasefire?
Well, Trace, it's a good question. The fact is that I never thought the deal was that great. Hamas only released about 30% of the hostages at about 10 hostages per day for that period of 8 days. And I never thought it was a great deal. And so going back to the pressure cooker is obviously piece #1. Hamas was begging for that ceasefire. #2, I've always questioned, and I know that the Mossad HQ at Glilot in Tel Aviv has been talking about Qatar. And why is Qatar, who houses Ismail Haniyeh and Khalid Mashal, why are they spearheading the negotiations, and doesn't that result in potential bad faith with the deal? So that's #2. Why isn't Saudi Arabia getting involved? And then 3, as I said before, those 8 days that Israel had to get those hostages back, that's really good what we call snooping and pooping, which is intelligence gathering, more information on the tunnels, more mapping, more seismographic photography below that dirt. So, to get back to that table, the pressure needs to stay on, and then Hamas will eventually start crying again, and then they'll come back and they'll sit down and we'll get some more hostages back, and maybe we'll grab a few too along the way.
Cameron, I got about 15 seconds for you to wrap us up here on the hostages. What are your thoughts?
I think he's absolutely right. Unfortunately, the international community is putting unrealistic expectations. These are not pragmatic antagonists with reasonable demands. The international community is expecting Israel to play Russian roulette with terrorists. This will never come for a positive benefit, so they need to keep the pressure on.
Yeah, Russian roulette seldom does. Cameron, Aaron.